Alrighty, I've got 5 after, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, if you don't know me yet, my name is Carly Merciful. I am the face, hands, and brain behind Quilt Studio that I like to think of as my quilty alter ego. I am an engineer in my day job. I still work full time. This is something I do in my free time, and it is my creative outlet. It's how I have fun. I'm going to go ahead and turn my video off as we get into the slides, and we will get started. Alrighty. So the way that these Q&As are going to work, we're going to have kind of a short recap of week's activities. I'm basically going to go through brief overview of all the things that are in the weekly email and the blog post, just because some people really like to listen to it or watch it on a video rather than reading big blocks of text on a blog post, which I totally get. So we'll kind of recap that stuff and just kind of talk about some of the logistics. We'll go over any questions that anyone has, and then some quick reminders for the week, and that will be it. I've just got a couple of slides kind of to go over each week to kind of recap what we are planning to tackle this week. Sessions are going to be recorded, and they'll be available on the So Long Hub page, which we'll talk about in a minute. Only audio and the slides are going to be recorded. You don't need a Zoom shirt. You don't need to worry about your hair or getting dressed in the morning. I'm here in the stretchy pants and a hoodie. It really doesn't matter. Your face is not going to be captured. You don't need to worry about that. It's just going to be the slides and me. I do ask that you please stay muted during the Q&A portion, just for logistic reasons. It's really hard with people talking over each other, so just hold your questions until the end. If you've never used Google Meet before, you're going to have a bar across the bottom. That's your control bar. A lot of this stuff will look familiar to you from Zoom. You've got mute and unmute. Video closed captions, if you need them, are available. They are auto-generated though, so I cannot guarantee how accurate they're going to be, but they're there if you need them. And then most importantly, there's a raise hand button here. And what that is going to do is start a queue, so that when we get to the Q&A portion, we'll just kind of work our way in order of the questions as they come in. There's also a chat feature here. If you use it, feel free to use that to talk to anybody else during the call, as much or as little as you want. The So Long Hub page was linked in the weekly email. If you haven't checked that out yet, I highly encourage you to do that. That's basically going to be the receptacle for everything related to the So Long, and it's just my website, quiltstudio.com/so long will take you there. It's going to have links to each of the weekly blog posts, so instead of kind of going back to the inbox and trying to find each of the week's emails, you can come here and get links to all of that stuff. There's also the link to join this Q&A call. After this call, I'll also be uploading all of the Q&A recordings here as well, so you can come and kind of rewatch any of those as you need to. There is also a shared gallery, which I think is pretty cool. Basically what this will allow you to do is just upload any of your progress photos to each of the weekly albums, and everybody else can come and kind of see what you're working on. Back in the day when Instagram was still awesome, it was really fun during so-alongs and quilt-alongs to be able to kind of see your feed full of fellow participants' pictures and what they were working on. The way that Instagram's changed recently, it's really hard to do that. It doesn't really like to show you everything from a hashtag anymore. So I created this share gallery to basically substitute for that, so you can see exactly what everybody else in the quilt along is working on. It'll also allow you to like and comment on each other's photos and kind of get conversations going that way as well if you want to. This is totally optional. You can upload here if you want to. You can also post on Instagram and just tag the So Long hashtag. That's totally fine as well. But it's just another option to kind of get that community element going a little bit more. It is going to ask you to sign into my website when you do this. Unfortunately, there's no way to turn that off. I would love to be able to just kind of upload anonymously, but it'll allow you to do single sign-on, so you can just log in with your Facebook or your Google account without creating like an extra password or anything like that, and that just attaches your name to the picture so we know who uploaded it, and that's all it's doing. That's the hub page. We will go ahead and dive into this week's topics, which is basically choosing your design and your coat pattern so that we can get started. So quilt coats come in kind of a variety of designs, and it's really sky's the limit here. But there are kind of 4 major buckets that most designs will fall into. The first is the all over, so this is basically just taking a quilt pattern and turning it into a coat. This lends itself well to really scrappy patterns and really crazy colors if you really want to be super flamboyant and just go crazy and make a fashion statement with your quilt coat. All over quilt designs are really cool for that. I do have down at the bottom just kind of general guidelines for the amount of fabrics that you're going to need. And all over the entire quilt is going to be your quilt coat. So you're going to need, a large throw or a twin size quilt coat in order to have enough for the pieces. Once we start cutting pattern pieces, you'll see why it's so much. There is going to be some scrap here. It's just the nature of the beast with garment patterns, but that's a general guideline. You'll need a throw to a twin size here. And then about 3 yards of lining fabric. And we'll talk a little bit where that number is coming from a little bit later. Second kind of big bucket is what's known as a mullet quilt coat design. This is like my personal favorite. It's basically party in the back. So the entire quilt coat's a solid color except for the back, and you've got, a really cool quilted panel featured there, which I think is really awesome. It's a great way to kind of have a toned down look a little bit, but still have that quilty flair. And I love it. And basically what it means is that you don't have to have quite as much quilt to work with because it's just that back panel that you need. And a baby size or crib size quilt is more than enough for that. You also need some additional exterior fabric. If you're using 42-inch wide fabric, that's about 2 yards. Will give you more than enough. And then again, that 3 yards of lining. Next kind of bucket is embellished, or basically just taking quilt blocks or selective designs and putting them at a couple of key places on the quilt coat. Maybe it's the back, maybe it's the pockets or something up on the shoulder, on the bodice of the coat. This is a really great way to use up orphan blocks that you might have, and also again kind of tone down that craziness of the all over scrappy quilt coat. If you want something that's a little bit more professional. Again, if you're using miscellaneous quilt blocks, you'll need whatever fabric requirements you need for that. You'll also need additional yards of exterior fabric. If you give yourself 3 yards, you'll have more than enough there, depending on just how many quilt blocks you end up working into the quilt coat. And then again, 3 yards of lining there. The last one I really love, I've never done it, but I really want to do it, is a whole cloth quilt coat. So basically you're just taking, yards and yards of exterior fabric and quilting the tar out of this thing with whatever design you can think of. So you could do like a really cool heirloom custom design. You could do, just an all over panto design if you just want some really nice even texture. The idea that I love is doing like a really cool featured, like graffiti quilting style-esque pattern, which would be really cool. This was actually done by Custom Quilts is their hashtag on Instagram. I'm blanking on the name right now, but it's in the Carly Porter graffiti style quilting. And can you imagine that all over a quilt coat and then just kind of showcasing that gorgeous custom quilting all over your quilt coat would be awesome. Again, I will work up to that. I'm not going to do that this time, but it would be really cool. For exterior fabric, you're just going to need yards of just a plain fabric, whatever you choose for your exterior, and that's what you're going to embellish with all of that quilting, and then again about 3 yards of 42-inch wide fabric for the interior. So those are the designs. As far as patterns, you've got lots of options out there. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the ones I would recommend depending on different styles that you're interested in. If you're looking for just like a boxier coat with a collar, the patchwork chore coat is a really great option. It also comes with a hooded option, and it's kind of mid-length, but kind of that boxier loose shape. You're looking for something like a little bit more tailored, the Tamarack jacket's really good. It comes with both hooded and collarless options, so just kind of a crew collar. The hooded option is an add-on though, so if you want to go that route, you need to buy basically 2 patterns, the base pattern and then the add-on for the hood. It's kind of nice because it's got this kind of shaped hemline a little bit, but also a really great option if you're interested in making kind of that style of coat. The elemental coat, again, written for a quilt coat specifically, rather than just a standard garment, is kind of tailored more to flatter, larger sizes, which is really great. It's kind of a looser fit, kind of that really comfy coat, and it comes in a variety of lengths. So they've got even a cropped length all the way down to like a really long extended trench coat length-esque. It's super comfy. It comes with or without a hood. The without hood version is again collarless. It's kind of that crew collar. So if you're looking for something with a formal collar, the patchwork chore coat is kind of going to be the best option for you. And the last option here I have is the Nova coat. This is not a quilt coat specifically pattern, but that's okay. but it's more of this like cocoon style boho-esque coat that lends itself really well to a quilt coat because it's kind of on the looser side. It's kind of got this like standing crew neckline, which I really like. And then there are the other options. And the reason I have this here is because it's really sky's the limit patterns that you can use for a quilt coat. You can do whatever you want. You can take any garment pattern almost, and turn it into a quilt coat. So some people have done quilted vests, this kind of funnel neck pullover hoodie style quilt sweater, whatever you want to call it, is also really popular. You can make hoodies, you can do all kinds of things. A couple of caveats here. You just want to make sure that if you're going to adapt another pattern to a quilt coat, you're checking for a couple of things. First, you want to make sure that the fit is nice and loose. A lot of these patterns are going to be designed for knits. Knits stretch, quilt coats don't. And so where that really comes into play is around the cuff lines, armholes, and neckline, basically, because knit garment patterns are going to rely on being able to stretch that over your head. You can't do that with a quilted fabric. So you just really want to make sure that if you're picking one of these patterns and adapting it, that you have a large enough neck hole that you don't have to rely on that stretch to get it over your head. And you also want to make sure that just the body fit is not super tight and fitted, because again, we're not going to have stretchy fabrics here. As you're picking out these patterns, if you want to go this route, if you've got questions, you want to DM me a picture of the pattern, or shoot me an email and just, hey, is this going to work? I'm happy to answer those questions throughout the week. But literally any pattern can be made into a quilt coat. Whatever kind of design you can think of can be done. With all of these patterns, we're going to go through in the sew along how to lengthen and shorten your hemline, lengthen and shorten sleeves, and then also add kind of a variety of accents, such as traditional buttons, toggle buttons, zippers, different kinds of pockets, that kind of thing. So all of these things can kind of be modified a little bit and tailored to make sure that it fits both you and make sure that it's the style that you want if you're having trouble finding exactly the pattern you're looking for. Again, much more detail, lots of suggested patterns in the blog post for this week, so go check it out, but that's kind of the smattering of things that I would recommend. All right. I'm going to go ahead and turn my video on. Again, drag myself over here. A couple of important things to remember this week, because I have a feeling a lot of people are going to kind of go shopping and get their fabrics gathered so they can start cutting in and working on their quilt cut next week. Really important to remember this is a garment. And what that means is that you're going to have to pre-wash this. I know I don't like pre-washing my fabrics usually when I quilt either, but when it comes to a garment, you really have to. And the reason for that is because if you've ever gotten like one of those like cheap tourist t-shirts from the gift shop or anything, right, and it fits perfectly the first time you wear it, and then you go to wash it and it shrinks, and it usually shrinks this way. Super annoying, right? But you can't wear that t-shirt again. It basically becomes a single use thing because it shrunk, and it no longer fits you anymore because it's not the same size. Same thing's going to happen here. We're working with quilting cottons. We're working with usually some sort of natural fiber batting, unless you're doing like 100% polyester, which I don't recommend at all. Natural fibers shrink, they relax the first time they're washed. And so when we're going to all of this trouble to make sure that the pattern fits you correctly and that you love the quilt coat that you're making, you don't want it to be perfectly sized when you try it on the first time, and then you wash it and it shrinks and now it's not wearable. And the only way to get around that is to pre-wash, pre-shrink everything before you start cutting fabric pieces. So you've got a couple options about how to do this. We're going to talk a little bit later in the sew along about lining options, how to line it. Basically, you've got two options. You can either quilt your fabric so that you've got your backing, batting, and quilt top quilted together, all 3 layers, and then you cut pieces from that. Seams in that instance are going to be finished with binding, and you can either do that machine or hand. I don't like doing that. That's not my preference, because if you do them by machine, you're going to end up with like really thick seams that are uncomfortable, in my opinion. Or you have to kind of hand sew to get them to lie flat. I don't hand sew. I do not have the patience for that. The other option is kind of like a drop-in or birth lining. You basically will quilt your exterior to your batting, and you'll cut one set of pattern pieces from that fabric, and then you'll do the same thing for your lining, basically make 2 quilts and then sew them right sides together. It's super, super easy. It kind of sounds a little complicated that way, but it is actually really easy, and I'll show you exactly how to do that as we get going. But in that case, you're going to want to pre-wash kind of that exterior quilted fabric and the interior lining fabric before you sew everything together and start cutting fabric pieces. So if you're quilting fabric pieces and then washing, if you're doing all 3 layers, you can totally do that. You can also do this if you're just kind of quilting your exterior fabric to a batting. I know it feels weird to take exposed batting and put it through a washing machine, but you can do it. Just put it on a gentle cycle. I've done it before. It works fine. So that's kind of option A. And that'll pre-wash all 3 layers so that everything's pre-shrunk before you start cutting fabric pieces. You could also pre-wash your fabrics before you begin piecing. So if you're a pre-washer naturally, you've probably already pre-washed all of your fabrics anyways before you start cutting into anything for the piecing part. That's totally fine as well. If you're going to do that, you're definitely going to want to pre-wash your batting as well. Pre-washing batting, again, feels a little bit weird. You're just going to toss this into your washer. Really delicate cycle. You basically just want to soak it and agitate it for a little bit. And then just air dry that batting and that'll pre-shrink it as well so that you've got exterior pre-shrunk, interior pre-shrunk, and everything's good to go. Otherwise, the interior is going to shrink and it's going to hold those exterior fabrics tighter after that first wash, and your quilt coat's still going to shrink. You can also pre-wash after piecing. Again, very, very delicate cycle. If you have a garment pad to kind of protect those seams, definitely use that. You're also going to have to repress all of your quilting seams if you go that route. I would kind of try to stay away from that if you can, but it is an option. Again, my preference is this first option, quilting everything together, piecing, quilting everything together, and then pre-washing either in one whole quilt sandwich or with just that exterior and batting layer quilted together. Okay. Other considerations for fabric. You want to think about the fact that this is a garment again. So you're going to be wearing it. I am a very clumsy person. I tend to get dirty very easily. So staining is a big concern for me. I'm not going to make a white quilt coat ever. It's just not practical at all for me. Along with that, you want to think about texture a little bit. So you're going to be wearing this thing. You don't want to have like super rough materials. That's going to get uncomfortable. But it's also nice to have something that's not just a flat color because again, you're going to notice any stains on that. So linens are really good. Some of the sprout wovens that are out there that just are gorgeous would be great for a quilt coat because there's like a little bit of texture to them that's going to hide anything that you get on your quilt coat, which is amazing. And you also want to think about warmth. So my first quilt coat, I put flannel as a lining, and I love the idea of a flannel lined quilt coat. Those things are hot. I live in northern Vermont, and even though we've got winter from October till basically April, it is still hot to wear, too hot to wear for most of the year. It holds a lot of heat, so I would recommend staying away from that unless you live in like Antarctica or very, very northern Canada somewhere. We're going to talk about some other options for linings, but I would stay away from anything that's like super thick exterior, super thick fluffy battings that would lead you to a really overly warm quilt coat that's just not comfortable to wear for most of the year. Alrighty, a couple of other kind of quick reminders that we need to cover logistically. This quilt coat is not set up to do a muslin, what is known as a muslin, which is basically a test garment to make sure that your pattern fits correctly. There's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, for me, the thought of making basically 2 garments in order to get 1 garment out of it is just like awful, right? That's super counterintuitive. I don't want to waste the fabric on that at all. It's also just a lot of work. People will kind of get through the first garment and then their enthusiasm fizzles out, right? And you never end up with a quilt coat that you can actually wear, which you don't want to happen to you. I've made a couple of these things and made quite a few garments in my time, and we're going to go through kind of basic fitting, how to measure your shelf to make sure you pick out the correct pattern size, all of that good stuff. And I am 100% confident that we're going to be able to get you a quilt coat on the first try that you are happy wearing, that you're pleased with. So we're going to avoid the muslin altogether. If you want to sew a muslin with your pattern, you're more than welcome to do that. But we've not set out weeks in this quilt along to make time for that. Because I don't feel that it's necessary. We're not doing super fitted jackets, super fitted garments, and we're going to give you all the tools that you need in order to end up with a quilt coat that fits you and looks nice and that you're super happy with on the first try. Okay? Alrighty, so with that, I will go ahead and open up for questions. Let me go ahead and look at the chat here and see if we've got anything. don't see anybody. Everything's super clear? Got a good plan for this week? Okay. There are no questions, then I will go ahead and move along to the end. Oh, let me just grab myself, pull it over there. Okay, so this is what we're doing for this week. You're going to choose your quilt coat design. You're going to figure out if it's, an all over, a mullet, an element, whole cloth, whatever you happen to be doing. You're going to decide what you're doing this week. And then you're going to choose your coat pattern. So whatever that will be, if it's a tamarack or a churro coat, go ahead and purchase that pattern, decide what you're doing. And then if you're ready, you can start choosing your fabrics based on what we kind of discussed earlier. Progress photos are going to be due by Wednesday. I ask that you kind of get those posted by 5 p.m. Just so that I can pull a winner and get it out in the Thursday morning email for week 2. Progress photos can either be uploaded to that shared gallery that we talked about earlier on the Sew Along Hub, or you can just post them and tag me and use the Sew Along hashtag in Instagram, whatever is easier for you. You can also do both if you want to do that, but just post a progress photo. As I kind of talked about in the weekly email, these are progress photos. You don't have to do everything done for this week in order to be eligible for the weekly prize. And as we get into piecing and quilting, that makes it easier for just people to not be too worried about keeping up exactly with every single task each week. So if you get a little bit behind, it's no big deal. Just post whatever progress you've had for that week, either on Instagram or in the shared gallery. And the prize for this week is a copy of my wonky woven pattern, which is what this picture is over here. It's also the pattern that was used in all of the photos that you would have seen on the promo materials for the quilt coat along. I actually kind of made my first quilt coat with a pattern that I was just kind of making up on the fly, and loved it so much that I kind of wrote it up into this wonky woven pattern, which if you really love that quilt coat, you can win a copy of it this week and make your very own wonky woven quilt coat. Okay, that's what we've got on the docket for this week. As always, if you've got questions as you're sewing, as you're trying to pick out your designs and patterns, shoot me a DM, respond to the Sew Along email. I'm here for you, and have fun this week. Okay.